Welcome to Mystic Artistry. I am Susan, and here we discuss reflections on art, nature, music, and the quiet mysteries that live within us. Before I ever started painting, I was designing jewelry. I would set up a table at craft fairs, sterling silver, real gemstones, pieces I had spent hours on. And I needed the money at the time. I had 3 young kids, and I was trying to make something work. People would come up, look closely, tell me how beautiful everything was, and then walk away every time. And my mother would be sitting next to me, muttering under her breath, somewhat loudly, about how could you admire something like that and still leave without taking anything with you? At the time, it was frustrating because I knew what went into it. But looking back now, I can see something I didn't understand then. There's a difference between being appreciated and being valued. And I think there was another layer to it too, one I didn't fully understand at the time. I have always loved beautiful things. I was raised around them. There was an appreciation for quality, for detail, for things that were made well, and I still carry that with me. My aunt was part of that world. She had studied fashion design and ran her own clothing business with my uncle. She always dressed to the nines, every detail considered, everything intentional. When I visited, she would take out her jewelry box. It wasn't filled with anything particularly expensive, but to me, it felt like a chest of gold and coins. She would let me choose one piece each time I visited, and I remember the feeling of it, like I was being entrusted with something rare, something magical. She had 2 boys, and I think there was a part of her that delighted in the girliness of me, like we were sharing something she didn't often get to express. My family used to laugh about a moment from when I was little. We were going to the dump, and I remember asking what I should wear. Even then, something in me wanted to meet the world with a sense of care, of presentation, of beauty. And yet, not long after, that relationship with my body began to change. After the trauma I had experienced, I became self conscious in ways I hadn't been before. I still love to dress up, but over time, that love became complicated. There were years when I wanted to disappear instead, when my body felt like it needed to be something to hide, whether I had become too thin or too heavy. Somewhere along the way, what I saw stopped matching what was real. The same eyes that once saw treasure in a simple jewelry box began to see flaws where there was simply a body trying to live, to heal, to belong. And I didn't question it. I believed what I saw. What I didn't understand then was how easily perception can become its own kind of illusion, how something can feel completely true even when it isn't. So, yes, I loved beautiful things always, and I still do. I was raised around them. There was an appreciation for quality, for detail, for things that were made well. But when I went out on my own, I couldn't always afford those things. And yet, I was still drawn to them. So there were times I would stretch, maybe more than I should have. Times I found myself in debt, trying to hold onto a feeling that beauty gave me. But I think I need to go a little deeper than that, because underneath all of it, I never really felt like I measured up. I was never tall enough, never thin enough, never quite enough. I worked for a modeling agency as a makeup artist in Boston, and occasionally they would use me to model hats or hair products, and even then there were comments, subtle, but not really subtle, about how if I just lost 10 pounds, my cheekbones would be a little bit more defined. And those things stay with you. So that feeling I was chasing through beauty, it wasn't just appreciation. It was trying to feel adequate. And that feeling wasn't just about objects. I was working in the cosmetic industry and at the same time trying to build a career as a performer. So I was surrounded by it: beauty, presentation, image, expression. It wasn't just something I appreciated, it was something inside of me. And when you're inside of that world, it can be all consuming because it starts to blur the line between what you love and what you feel you need to be. And layered on top of that were the expectations I grew up with. A more conventional path, finding a partner who was financially successful, or choosing a career that was stable and well paying. And I didn't do that. I chose to build something on my own. And somewhere along the way, that started to feel like I had disappointed those expectations, and maybe even myself. Because even within the industries I was in, I never quite felt like I measured up there either. So there was this constant undercurrent of self doubt, self deprecating thoughts, questioning my own worth. And if I'm being honest, that is something I still navigate. So here I am, still creating beautiful things, hearing that they're beautiful, watching people admire them, and still not knowing how to place a value on them, not wanting to undersell myself, but not believing I could fully ask for more either. And the result of that is I have so many paintings I've never let go of, not because they aren't wanted, but because I never quite found a way to stand in their own value or my own. And when I really sit with that, I can see that this didn't just show up in my artwork. It showed up in other places too. I remember when I was singing commercial jingles. Those sessions would start early. You'd get up, go into the studio, and audition. And there was one particular job, a well-known commercial, where I was up against another vocalist. She was very assertive, very bold. She wasn't holding anything back. She was showing them exactly what she had and what she could do. And the producer on the session was someone I had dated. He knew my voice inside and out. He knew what I was capable of. And I remember him once saying to me more than once, "Why are you holding back? Show them what you've got." And the more he said it, the more I held back. And I've thought about that moment so many times. Because it wasn't that I didn't have the ability. It wasn't that I didn't know what to do. It was something else. It was fear. But not the kind of fear that's obvious. It was quieter than that. It was the kind of fear that tells you to stay just a little smaller, just a little safer, just a little less visible. And that's where I started to understand something. That a lot of what we think is reality is actually fear. And I can almost hear the question, if that was the fear, If I was trying to stay smaller, safer, less visible, then why would I choose a path that required me to be seen at all? Why performing? Why putting myself out there? Why any of it? And the answer I can give you is this: because there was another part of me, a part that wanted to express, a part that felt alive when I was creating, a part that knew on some level that this was where I was meant to be. So I was living in this in between space, one part of me stepping forward and another quietly pulling back, wanting to be seen and afraid of what would happen if I truly was. And I think many of us do live there more than we realize. It's not that we don't want the thing, it's that we don't always feel safe having it. Sometimes the very thing we're drawn to is also the thing that exposes the places in us that still need healing. And that's where I started to really understand something about fear. We talk about fear as if it's something loud, something obvious, something that stops us in our tracks. But that's not how it showed up for me. It was quieter than that. It sounded reasonable. It sounded protective. It sounded like, just be careful. Don't push too hard. Don't go too far. And I listened to it, not because it was true, but because it felt true. And that's where that phrase comes in: fear, false evidence appearing real. Because when I look back at those moments, standing behind a table, watching people walk away, sitting in a studio, being told to step forward and not doing it, nothing was actually stopping me. There was no real barrier. No one was telling me I wasn't good enough. No one was saying I didn't belong there. In fact, in many cases, I was being invited forward. But the story in my mind felt more real than what was actually happening. And that's the part that's hard to see when you're inside of it. Because fear doesn't always say, you can't. Sometimes it says, maybe you shouldn't. And that maybe is enough to keep you small. So I don't know if it's about fighting that voice. I think it's about learning to recognize it, to pause and ask, is this actually true? Or is this something I've carried, something I've been taught, something I've come to believe about myself that was never really mine to begin with? And little by little, choosing to step forward anyway. Not all at once, not perfectly, but just enough to start proving that voice wrong. And sometimes the very places we hesitate the most are the places that hold the most expansion for us. And I think for me, this is where it's starting to shift, because I've spent so much time holding on to these pieces, not because they aren't ready to be out in the world, but because I wasn't. And I can feel that changing. So I do have a number of paintings that I'm beginning to release slowly in my own way, not from a place of pressure, but from a place of finally being willing to let them be seen and received. And that feels different. And I'm beginning to see that fear doesn't disappear when we push it away. It changes when we're willing to meet it with awareness, to listen instead of react, to stay instead of run. Because on the other side of fear isn't always certainty. Sometimes it's truth. And as always, I am listening.